I'm going to teach you how to set up and play Martyr, Bloody Theater 1528. I'll be setting up and teaching for a 4-player game. With the board on the table, begin by separating the Doctrine tiles and the Spectator tiles into 2 separate groups, those with a square on the back and those without. Those tiles with a square will get placed face up randomly on the board on the spaces with a square. Those tiles without a square are placed face up randomly on the spaces without squares. Until you have an arrangement something like this, for example. Next, place the 4 condemn trackers, which are these flames, on the word condemn on each of the 4 buildings in the corners. Place the 4 support trackers, which are the stars, on the word support on each of the 4 corner buildings. Shuffle the sermon deck, draw 3 cards, and place 1 face up on each position for the sermon cards here. Place the sermon deck near the board. Do the same thing with the hymn deck, placing 2 hymn cards face up on their positions. Then place the hymn deck near the board. For a 4-player game, we will use all 4 of the allegiance tiles, arranging them face up, showing the number of players. As you can see, 4 stars for a 4-player game. Stack these tiles in descending order, and then place them in the corner next to the building, matching their doctrine. Do this for all 4 doctrines. Place the 12 prayer cubes in the prayer section, showing the hands here. 12 cubes consisting of 3 cubes per player. These do not need to be in any specific order here. Randomly deal each player 1 Articles of Faith card, which they should keep hidden from other players. The rest of the Articles of Faith cards can go back into the box. Give each player 5 breath cubes. Note that there are a different number of breath cubes provided based on the number of players. After each player has selected a player color, give them their 4 intention cards in their color and their matching avatar. Select a start player and place the avatars in turn order at the bottom of each of the 4 stakes in the center of the board. Place the turn tracker, which is the flame with the smoke, on the top of the leftmost stake. Place the spirit marker on the center luminary space, and we're all done with setup. Now let's talk about how to play. Martyr is played over an undetermined number of rounds, consisting of 4 phases each: the intention phase, the perform phase, the response phase, and the inhale and endure phase, during which you're basically cleaning up and preparing the game for the next round. The goal of Martyr is to have the most points when the game ends. The game ends when any player does not have any breath cubes at the end of the last phase. A quick summary of how points are gained. To score for a doctrine, there are 3 requirements. You must have at least 1 of the doctrine tiles, 1 of its matching allegiance tiles, and the doctrine's allegiance level must be at or beyond where you placed your prayer cube for that doctrine. Failing to have all 3 of these for a doctrine means that doctrine will not score for you at all. I'll help you understand these requirements as we go along. During the intention phase, you will be identifying the doctrine that you intend on claiming this round. Do this by selecting your intention card, matching that doctrine, and placing that card face down in front of you. The player 4th in turn order can place 2 intention cards in front of them, as indicated below their avatar in the center. When all players have selected and placed their face-down cards, reveal them simultaneously. Next, in the Perform phase, you will be placing your breath cubes on actions that will help you prepare for getting that doctrine tile you indicated in the Intention phase. For example, the yellow player indicates they intend to get the Just War doctrine tile, so they will be working on that this phase, and the others will be attempting to do the same for their intended doctrines. There are 3 actions available in this phase, and those actions are prayer, hymns, and sermons. On your turn, you can do any of these 3 actions in any order, or your 4th option is to pass. Play continues in turn order, 1 action at a time, until all players pass. The turn tracker shows who the active player is, and after each player's turn, the turn tracker advances to the next player. Right now, we can see that it's Green's turn. Let's start with sermons. On your turn, take one of the sermon cards and place it in front of you. Place 2 of your breath cubes on the luminary spaces where your sermon card was located. Now, adjust turn order according to the sermon card you chose. For example, Red chose to move the Martyr at the first stake to the last stake. So Red will move the Green Martyr to the last stake, adjusting turn order for everybody. The turn tracker will follow Red. After Red's turn is complete, Blue's turn will be next. Sermon cards will also help you to claim spectator tiles in the next phase. Note, in a 3 and 4 person game, you cannot claim more than 1 sermon card per round. Also, you cannot perform a sermon if the action cannot be fully completed. For example, you can't play move forward 1 stake if you're at the beginning of the turn order. You can also not perform a sermon if you have a spectator on the back of your intention card, which we'll cover in the next phase. Now let's talk about the hymn action. Place 1 breath cube at the topmost unoccupied luminary space on either hymn card, the goal being for the breath cubes to end on a space matching your intention card. For example, on my turn, I place a breath cube here. An opponent might place one here, another one might place here, another here, and so on over the course of the phase. After everybody has passed in this phase, you can see that the last breath cubes ended on these doctrines here. And this one does match my intention card, which is good for me. I might be able to get one of those doctrine tiles in the next phase. Players whose intention card does not match either of these doctrines when all players have passed will most likely not be able to get a doctrine tile, and we'll look at an exception to this later. But in general, you want to make sure that the last breath cube placed by any player on either hymn card matches the face-up intention card that you played. Let's look at the prayer action now. To do the prayer action, place 1 of your breath cubes on the leftmost unoccupied space next to a doctrine. If the space is full, you may place it on the space to the right if it is available. First thing I do is claim the top allegiance tile available for that doctrine. For example, I placed a breath cube next to the swearing of oaths, so I claim the available matching allegiance tile, which may gain me 6 points at the end of the game. I place it in my player area, and next, take one of my prayer cubes matching my player color, in this case green, and place it on any unoccupied space on the allegiance track of the matching doctrine. Which side will I place the prayer cube on? Support or condemn? That depends on what my articles of faith are on this doctrine. My articles of faith card says I support the doctrine of the swearing of oaths, so I will place my prayer cube on that side that supports the swearing of oaths. The numbers on each space indicate how many points you would like each of the doctrine tiles that you claim for this doctrine to be worth. For example, if I place my prayer cube here on the 9 to hopefully bring the audience to mobilization, I want each swearing of oaths doctrine tile I claim to be worth 9 points. You may wonder then, why would you choose a lower number? Because in order to score 9 points per tile by the end of the game, the corresponding support tracker must be equal to or above the position of my prayer cube. The allegiance trackers, whether they are for condemn or for support, advance one position for every doctrine tile that is claimed by anyone having their prayer cube on the same side. For example, my prayer cube and the red player's prayer cube are both on the support side of the swearing of oaths. In the next phase, if the red player claims a swearing of oaths doctrine tile, the support tracker will advance one position. Later, if I claim a swearing of oaths doctrine tile, the support tracker will advance again. Notice that the tracker has equaled the position of the red player's prayer cube. Red is now eligible to score for the swearing of oaths doctrine, and also happy that I helped the support tracker to advance to their prayer cube. They also helped the support tracker advance one more towards mine, but I still have some ways to go. So had I chosen to place my prayer cube on the 3, it could have the support tracker pass it quite easily, but each of my tiles for this doctrine would only be worth 3 points rather than a higher value. Note that there are 4 doctrines, but only 3 prayer cubes per player, so choose your doctrines wisely during the prayer action. An additional important thing to note is that at the end of every round, for every unoccupied luminary space within this dashed box on the left, 1 breath will be permanently removed from the game. Other breath cubes will get reallocated among players for the next round, but only after the number of cubes equal to the number of empty spaces has been removed. On your turn, if you no longer have any breath cubes or do not want to take any more actions this round, you can also choose to pass. Indicate that you have passed by moving your avatar down away from the stake. After everyone has passed, then the response phase begins. In the response phase, you will be moving the spirit marker through the audience to hopefully claim doctrine tiles and/or spectator tiles. The first thing to do in this phase is determine what is called the doctrine verse, which is the doctrine on the hymn where the last breath cubes were placed. For example, this hymn on the left, the last cube was placed on the doctrine of church authority. On this hymn, the last cube was placed on the doctrine of state-controlled church. Therefore, the doctrine verse is church authority and state-controlled church. All players whose face-up intention cards do not match a doctrine verse, they return their intention cards to their hand. All face-up intention cards should now match the doctrine verses. In turn order, each player will now get 1 turn to move the spirit marker to an adjacent space to claim a doctrine tile or a spectator tile, or both. On the very first turn, the spirit marker is considered adjacent to the 6 innermost tiles. To claim a doctrine tile on your turn, you must have a face-up intention card matching the doctrine tile adjacent to the spirit marker. If the matching tile is not adjacent, but is 1 or 2 spaces away, you may place a breath cube on the Hasten the Spirit action. This allows you to move over vacant spaces only. In order to have the spirit adjacent to a tile you may want to claim. For example, if it was my turn, and I wanted to claim this church authority tile, I could, because it matches my face-up intention card. But I could also claim this one, because although it is farther away, I could place one of my breaths on the Hasten the Spirit action in order to make the spirit marker adjacent to the tile I wanted to claim. When I claim a doctrine tile, I place it on my matching allegiance tile and advance the allegiance marker 1 space on the side where my prayer cube is, like this. If you claim a doctrine and do not have an allegiance tile, do not advance the tracker yet. When you do get an allegiance tile, simply play catch-up and advance the tracker equal to the number of doctrine tiles that you have in your possession. For example, if I did not have the allegiance tile yet, and I had claimed 2 of these tiles, when I do the prayer action and claim the matching allegiance tile eventually, because I have 2 doctrine tiles, I would then advance that tracker 2 spaces immediately. If you have a sermon card from the last phase, you may claim a spectator tile, following the same adjacency rules as for the doctrine tiles. Here is the process for spectator tiles. Return the sermon card to the bottom of the sermon deck. Take 1 of the 2 breath cubes used to get the sermon card, place it back in your player area, and take the spectator tile. Now the spectator will be able to help you in a couple ways. Notice on the back of the intention cards, there is a space that is the size of a tile. As soon as you claim a spectator, you will choose one of your intention cards from your hand, place it face down in your player area, putting the spectator tile on the back of the indicated space. Remember the players whose intention card didn't match the doctrine verse? They couldn't claim a doctrine card this round. Well, having the extra intention card, and in secret, gives you another opportunity to match the doctrine verse. If you have a spectator on the back of an intention card, and the intention card matches the doctrine verse, when it's your turn in the response phase, you can reveal this card and you'll be able to claim the adjacent doctrine tile matching this card. It sort of acts as a subversive means to have another opportunity to have a choice on what doctrine you'd like to claim. Additionally, when that happens, now that the spectator is off of the card, it can be used as a one-time breath on a hymn card during the perform phase. They can only be used once as a breath and only on a hymn card, and only 1 per hymn card. Note, though, that spectators left either on an intention card, for example, or in your player area at the end of the game, are counted as unfulfilled and count as negative 10 points. So use those spectator tiles because they help you a great deal. You are allowed to claim a doctrine tile and or a spectator tile in either order, as long as you meet the requirements to do so in this phase. After each person has had 1 turn, including even if they are unable to do anything on their turn, the response phase ends. In the inhale and endure phase, we will prepare the game for the next round by doing the following. For every unoccupied space in the dashed box of the prayer section, permanently remove 1 breath cube from the game by discarding breath cubes from the board and from cards. But do not remove any from the Haste in the Spirit section until both spaces are full. For example, here are 2 empty spaces, so we will remove 2 breath cubes from the game. Do not remove any breaths from the players. If there are any spectator tiles on the hymn cards, discard those from the game. Collect any remaining breath cubes from the board or any cards and distribute them 1 at a time in the current reverse turn order. Some players may end up with more or few than other players. Move all avatars up to the bottom of their stakes. Make sure the turn tracker is on the top of the stake above the first player's avatar. Discard sermon cards from the board to the bottom of the deck and place 3 new ones face up. Also return unplayed sermon cards from player areas to the bottom of the deck. Discard the hymn cards from the board to the bottom of the hymn deck and place 2 new ones face up. Return all face-up intention cards back to players' hands of unplayed intention cards. If any players have no breath cubes, the game ends immediately, and you will proceed to end game scoring. Otherwise, begin again with the intention phase. Now, let's go over how scoring works. For each of your qualifying doctrines, multiply the number of doctrine tiles times the allegiance level of your prayer cube. Let's look at these 4 examples. Green achieved the allegiance tile and 1 doctrine tile for swearing of oaths. Let's look at their level. The tracker did not reach all the way up to 9. So while green has 2 of the requirements, green does not have the 3rd requirement of the level being up to its prayer cube. Green scores 0 for that doctrine. Red has the allegiance tile and 2 doctrine tiles for swearing of oaths. Let's look at the level. The tracker did reach up to their red prayer cube, so red will score 4 points for each of those tiles. 2 tiles, 4 points each, is 8 points, plus 10, 18 points for this doctrine for red. Let's look at the blue player. Blue has the allegiance tile and 1 doctrine tile for church authority, matching the allegiance tile. Let's look at the level. The tracker did make it up to 9 for blue, so blue will score 9 points for that tile, plus 10 points for the allegiance tile at 19. However, blue has an unfulfilled spectator. Blue did not use this spectator to its full capacity, which is leaving this at negative 10 points. So blue only has 9 points, effectively canceling out this 10 points. 9 points for that tile. Yellow did mighty good by getting 3 doctrine tiles for church authority. However, no allegiance tile. So yellow does not score for this doctrine. You will repeat these steps for all 4 of the doctrines, for all that are qualifying, and the player with the most points wins the game. Any ties are broken by the player who received the most points in specific doctrines, beginning with the doctrine of church authority and clockwise around to the swearing of oaths. In the unlikely event that there is still a tie, well then whoever was least entertained, they lose the game. And that is how to play Martyr, Bloody Theater 1528. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.